And the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, a private not-for-profit organization. As always, please feel free to contact us with your comments, suggestions, or any questions you may have. And please stay with us. Arena Buffalo News is coming up next.
The following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or another print disability that makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org.
Your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service now presents a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News for Wednesday, May 27th, 2026. Your readers today are
Larry Beenan
and Linda Ranella. Starting with the weather report. Clouds and sun today with a brief shower or two, a high of 76. A shower in places during the evening, otherwise partly cloudy tonight, low of 51. Partly sunny and not as warm tomorrow, a high of 67 and a low of 50. For Friday, breezy in the afternoon, high of 66, low of 49. Saturday, times of clouds and sun, high of 64, low of 45. Sunday, sunshine and some clouds, a high of 67, low of 50. Monday, a shower in the morning or two, high of 66, low of 49. For Tuesday, a little rain, high of 69, low of 50. Sunrise was at 5:42 a.m. and sunset tonight is at 8:43 p.m. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Our opening story. Assembly agrees to auto insurance reforms and budget. Hochul wants limits to reduce number of unnecessary lawsuits. Albany. Motorists found more than 50% responsible for traffic crashes they're suing over will be unable to collect damages for pain and suffering under a budget bill that was passed by the Assembly Tuesday and is expected to win state Senate approval. The bill, part of a $268 billion budget, also calls for creating buffer zones to keep protesters away from congregants outside houses of worship, extending deadlines for the state to meet targets for lower pollution-related emissions, softening the state environmental review process for building projects, changes to the Tier 6 pension plan, which includes 61,000 public employees in Western New York. Governor Kathy Hochul proposed the restrictions on plaintiffs suing over crashes to lower the number of unnecessary lawsuits she contends have contributed to New Yorkers paying some of the nation's highest auto insurance rates. Hochul, who has made affordability her signature issue as she seeks re-election, has said intoxicated drivers and scofflaws should not be able to profit from incidents they caused. Any plaintiff found more than 50% responsible for an auto collision could no longer sue for non-economic damages, such as pain and suffering. The bill also tightens the definition of a serious injury. It caps at $100,000 the amount of pain and plaintiff suffering money a plaintiff can obtain for a serious injury if the plaintiff was found to be driving uninsured, intoxicated, or committing a felony. The auto insurance reforms, heavily opposed by the New York State Trial Lawyers Association, were the main sticking point between Hochul, Assembly Speaker Carl Heastie, Democrat Bronx, and Senate Majority Leader Andrea Stewart Cousins, Democrat Yonkers, on a budget that was due April 1st. Given the delayed budget, lawmakers have passed 15 budget extenders to fund state operations. On Tuesday, Assembly member Mary Beth Walsh, Republican Burnt Hills, an attorney, said the auto insurance reforms were incredibly problematic. She raised the possibility of a child running into the street, being struck by a car, and being unable to sue for non-economic damages. Assemblymember Gary Pretlow, Democrat Mount Vernon, who chairs the Assembly's Ways and Means Committee, offered less than enthusiastic support for the Hochul-favored auto insurance proposal. This was presented to us as part of the executive budget, and we didn't change it, Pretlow responded. The bill included forming an insurance fraud task force with state police involved to combat cases of fraud that Hochul said has driven up premiums. Auto insurers will no longer be able to raise their rates beyond 5% without getting approval. The bill requires approval from the State Department of Financial Services, with excess profits to be returned to ratepayers, officials said. The bill calls for creating buffer zones outside houses of worship in the wake of instances in which congregants were harassed and subjected to slurs outside synagogues, mosques, and churches. Violators could be charged with the new low-level misdemeanor offense, criminal interference with access to a place of religious worship, if they intentionally block congregants from entering their house of worship, or put someone in fear of their safety within 50 feet of the house of worship. The New York Civil Liberties Union opposes buffer zones, saying it violates New Yorkers' freedom of speech. As for pollution-related emissions, under the 2019 Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act, the state was supposed to lower pollution-linked emissions by 40% by 2030 and 85% by 2050. The bill passed the Assembly on Tuesday calls for the state to lower emissions 60% by 2040 and 85% by 2050. With the state using a less restrictive accounting formula to assess emissions than the formula it had been using to make New Yorkers more consistent with other states and the international community. Environmental groups vehemently oppose the changes. The bill also eases environmental review requirements for building projects. Then Governor Hugh Carey signed the State Environmental Quality Review Act in 1975. Under reforms pushed by Hochul and supported by several municipal leaders in Western New York, projects in which environmental concerns are already being addressed will go forward without undergoing the SEQRA process. Those projects will still be subject to state regulatory and permit reviews for water use, air quality, and natural resource protections. Hochul proposed the changes as a way to lessen red tape and encourage building of much-needed housing. Among the changes the bill calls for in the Tier 6 pension system are lower employee contributions to pensions from a range of 3% to 6% to 3% to 5.75%. Teachers with 30 years of service can retire at 58, down from 63. Under the bill, and it calls for increasing the cap on overtime that can be included to calculate the retirement benefits for the state police and firemen retirement system and other public employees. The Tier 6 pension system covers 780,000 public employees statewide who were hired since April 1st, 2012. Linda?
Thank you, Larry. Buffalo police officer among two shot on Sherman Street. A Buffalo police officer and another person were shot Tuesday afternoon at a house on Sherman Street, according to a police source. Both were shot multiple times and were taken to Erie County Medical Center, according to the source. It was the second time in 4 days that a Buffalo police officer was wounded on the job. Buffalo Police Department and Buffalo Fire Department radio transmissions archived on broadcastify.com also described two gunshot victims who were transported by ambulance to ECMC. Their conditions were not immediately available. The incident began after a woman called 911 from a house on Sherman between Broadway and Paderewski Drive at 2:01 p.m., according to the police source. The situation was initially categorized as an intoxicated person, then upgraded to domestic trouble, and then to a gun call after a woman reported the man possessed a loaded gun, according to the source. The first officer was dispatched on the call at 2:07 p.m., the source said. Buffalo firefighters responded to the scene and provided aid to the injured people. Buffalo police cars shut down traffic along a portion of Jefferson Avenue to allow the ambulance transporting the injured officer to get to the hospital faster, according to radio transmissions. Buffalo Police Commissioner Erica Shields said an officer was shot, but said she had no further details in answer to a reporter's question about the incident. Shields confirmed at the end of the press meeting on a different matter that an officer had been shot and then quickly excused herself from the news conference to attend to the matter. Shields was speaking at a news conference she had called earlier to address an unrelated incident that occurred Saturday. In that incident, a police officer was stabbed by a suspect, and that suspect was then shot by police. The police officer was stabbed in the torso beneath his left armpit. He was treated at Erie County Medical Center and released. The suspect was shot by police on Saturday and remains hospitalized. At a later news conference, Mayor Sean Ryan spoke about both incidents. This is a stark reminder of the dangers that the brave men and women of the Buffalo Police Department face each and every day when they leave their homes to go to work, he said. So our prayers are with that police officer and with that officer's family. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Putin escalates Kiev missile strikes despite criticism. Kiev. With the battlefield largely at a stalemate, Russia is ramping up ballistic missile attacks on Ukraine to try to regain the strategic initiative by overwhelming air defenses and demoralizing its population. The threat of sustained strikes indicates Russian President Vladimir Putin remains committed to his war aims despite a string of recent setbacks that have fueled rising criticism at home. It follows a record Ukraine drone attack on Moscow and its surrounding region, and as Kiev has waged an increasingly effective campaign targeting Russian oil refineries. Moscow feels it has to respond somehow to the strikes that Kiev has been carrying out with increasing success, said Alexander Gubov, Berlin-based director of the Carnegie Russia Eurasia Center. Right now, Russia sees a window of opportunity because Kiev's stockpiles of Patriot interceptors have been significantly depleted. Ukraine is struggling to replenish reserves of air defense missiles amid increased demand stoked by the Middle East war. U.S.-led peace talks with Russia and Ukraine have also stalled as the Trump administration has focused on the war with Iran. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov advised U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio in a phone call Monday to evacuate U.S. citizens and diplomats from Kiev under Moscow's announced campaign of systematic strikes against the Ukrainian capital. That came a day after Ukraine forced one of the biggest Russian air barrages of the war, including with the hypersonic Orshchnik missile that was used for the first time since January. Russia fired 30 Iskander-M missiles in Sunday's attack, causing widespread destruction and injuries across the Ukrainian capital. The assault targeted major cities and included 90 missiles and 600 drones, Ukraine's Air Force said. Ukraine said it intercepted 11 of the missiles, a neutralization rate of 37%. That was well below the 67% recorded during previous major barrages on Kiev on May 14th, according to Bloomberg calculations, based on daily data from Ukraine's Air Force Command. Unfortunately, there were too many missiles for our air defense resources to handle. Sergei Bezkrestovnov, an advisor to the defense minister, said on Facebook following Sunday's attack. The situation appears even more difficult in regions outside Kiev that lack the kind of cover provided by U.S.-made Patriot air defense systems for the capital. Ukraine failed to intercept any of the 14 Iskander-M ballistic missiles launched in the May 18 attack that targeted areas from Odessa in the south to Dnipro in central Ukraine and Chernihiv in the north, according to the Air Defense Service. The latest campaign mirrors tactics Moscow employed in the winter as Russia pounded energy infrastructure in an attempt to freeze Ukrainians into submission. The attacks deprived hundreds of thousands of people of water and power in the conflict's coldest winter so far, though they failed to wring any concessions from Ukraine to bring an end to the war. Still, it remains unclear whether it has the ability to maintain large-scale attacks with ballistic missiles for a sustained period. Russia hasn't received a response from the U.S. to its latest warning about strikes on Kiev. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov told reporters on Tuesday, while it denies targeting civilians, Russia has repeatedly hit residential buildings and civilian infrastructure in waves of attacks on cities since the start of the 2022 full-scale invasion. Ballistic missiles are particularly difficult to intercept because they travel much faster than drones and along steeper trajectories, leaving air defenses little time to respond. Russia's Iskander-M missiles inflict most damage, while slower-going cruise missiles are easier to intercept and mostly serve to deflect air defenses. Ukraine's shortage of Western-made anti-ballistic munitions is amplified by Russia's ability to continue producing missiles. The share of Iskander-M and attacks declined from 55% in January to less than 30% in March, but it has grown again and exceeded 41% so far in May. Moscow framed the strikes as retaliation for a Ukrainian drone attack on a college in the Russia-occupied Luhansk region that it said killed 21 students. Russia vowed retaliation for the attack in the city of Starobolsk in televised comments at the Kremlin on Friday. Ukraine's general staff said its forces hit the headquarters of a Russian drone unit operating in Starobolsk, and it rejected Putin's allegation that civilian facilities were hit. Lavrov told Rubio that Russia's strikes would target relevant decision-making centers, according to the Russian Foreign Ministry. The ministry earlier Monday urged all foreign nationals, including staff of diplomatic missions and representatives of international organizations, to leave Kiev and advised city residents to avoid military and administrative infrastructure. European Union Ambassador to Kiev, Katarina Mathernova, called Russian threats a sign of desperation and said Western diplomats were not planning to relocate. The EU is not going anywhere. We are staying in Kiev, she wrote in a Facebook post. We are staying with Ukraine. On the call with Rubio, Lavrov accused Europe and Ukraine of undermining agreements with Russia that he says Putin reached with President Trump during their 2025 summit in Alaska, according to the Russian readout. Rubio told reporters on Tuesday that his Russian counterpart called him to relay the message directly to the president about the strikes. Kiev has been a very dangerous place now for a number of years, he said. Well, this is what happens with these wars. I mean, they just continue to escalate, Rubio said in Jaipur, India. And the U.S. stands ready and prepared to help to do whatever it can to facilitate the end of this war. Putin is demanding that Ukraine withdraw its forces from the eastern Donetsk region as part of any deal to end the war. Ukraine rejects the demand, refusing to cede territory that the Russian army has failed to capture in fighting since 2014. While Trump returned to the White House in January last year, pledging to bring a rapid end to Europe's worst conflict since World War II, more than 16 months of U.S. diplomacy have failed to reach a breakthrough. European allies and Canada have largely taken over the responsibility for financing military aid for Kiev. But the key air defense capabilities continue to be produced in the U.S., and supply is being strained by the war in Iran. There is a bilateral escalation from both Ukraine and Russia, said Tatiana Stanarova, founder of Ardpolitik. While the Kremlin is concerned about the pause in U.S.-led talks and trying to win back American attention, we are likely to see a new escalation than a softening of the position from Russia, she said. Linda?
Thank you, Larry. You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. The time is 9:18. Today in history. Wednesday, May 27th. In 1896, an F4 tornado struck St. Louis, Missouri, and East St. Louis, Illinois, killing more than 250 people and destroying more than 300 buildings. In 1915, the HMS Princess Irene exploded while being loaded with mines off the shore of Kent, England, killing more than 350 people. In 1919, Eugene Sullivan and William Taylor received a patent for Pyrex glass intended for culinary or laboratory uses. In 1919, an NC-4 seaplane completed the first transatlantic flight traveling from Rockaway, New York to Lisbon, Portugal. In 1930, the Chrysler Building in New York was completed and opened, briefly becoming the world's tallest building and tallest structure. In 1937, the Golden Gate Bridge, spanning the strait that connects the Pacific Ocean to San Francisco Bay, opened to pedestrians. In 1962, a fire was started to clear out room at a landfill used by Centralia, Pennsylvania. The fire is considered to have sparked the underground fires that are still burning today. In 2006, a magnitude 6.3 earthquake in Indonesia killed an estimated 6,234 people and destroyed more than 60,000 homes. And in 2016, President Barack Obama became the first sitting U.S. president to visit the Hiroshima Peace Memorial in Japan. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Resolution needed. Real progress is important in talks between New York Seneca Nation. Governor Kathy Hochul and Seneca Nation Indians President J. Conrad Seneca should find a good time to meet and sort out a few important items. One topic could focus on how the state can atone for the atrocities committed against indigenous children at the former Thomas Indian School in Irving. The other item at the top of the discussion list is, of course, an unresolved gaming compact that expired in 2023. New York State and the Seneca Nation of Indians have a turbulent history when it comes to the gaming compact. Over the years, talks have broken down as misunderstandings and missteps have been the norm. The result is almost always same. Stalemate. Who was right? Who was wrong? The bottom line is that there was a deal and the outcome was agreed upon payments to municipalities, Niagara Falls, Buffalo, and Salamanca, that have had to endure the economic hardship of dealing with the downsides of gambling in increased police resources, addiction, and recovery. The state takes 25% of the net slot machine profits, but that agreement expired in December 2023. As reported by News Albany Bureau Chief Robert Gavin, Seneca has called on Hochul to stop stalling and meet. He says he'll meet anywhere in the state and practically any time, but he claims he has received no answer from the government. The governor's office says Hochul is committed to strengthening the government-to-government relationship between the Seneca Nation and the state of New York. Not only is the governor committed to the administration, continues to meet with Seneca officials to find ways for additional collaboration and discuss the unique challenges facing the nation. Clearly, there is a disconnect between perception and reality. Seneca, elected in November 2024, said he wanted Seneca Nation to be known for more than the gambling compact. Fair enough. It is a reasonable expectation, and it is some movement is following the governor's heartfelt apology last year for the state's involvement in running the Thomas Indian School on Seneca Nation Cattaraugus territory. The history of that school dates to 1875 when the state took over the institution. It had opened in 1855 as the Thomas Asylum for orphan and destitute Indian children. The state kept the school until its closure in 1957. The horror in the name of cultural assimilation unleashed upon these children not only occurred in New York State but in other such schools in the United States and Canada. American Indian, Alaska Native, and Native Hawaiian children were stripped of their identities, including their languages, at these institutions. In 2021, the Department of the Interior started an investigation into the history of the schools. Former President Joe Biden later apologized on behalf of the U.S. On May 20th, 2025, Hochul apologized for the state's role at the Thomas Indian School, adding that she wanted to create new education materials about indigenous nations' histories, cultures, and contributions. Seneca City wants the state to invest $1 million in the state budget to start the process of building two schools, one on the Seneca Nation Allegheny territory, the other on the Cattaraugus territory. The total price tag would exceed $14 million. Seneca also asked the governor to support a $150,000 study of ground-penetrating radar at the campus of the Thomas Indian School to search for the remains of children who went missing or were killed, their resting places unknown. A representative of the Hochul administration said officials from her office met Monday with the Seneca Nation to discuss their request to fund the schools. These are not unreasonable requests. The governor should sit down and face-to-face with the Seneca Nation leadership, address the future of Native education, and finally resolve the drawn-out issue of the gaming compact. Linda?
Thank you, Larry. The editorial cartoons, the first one is by Adam Zeiglis of the Buffalo News, and it shows Stephen Colbert seated at a table with his mug in his hand, the late night Stephen Colbert, but he is muzzled. There's a logo like CBS's logo, and it's strapped around his mouth, and he's saying, and there's an asterisk at the end of that conversation, and that translates down below to tune into my YouTube channel for my regularly scheduled show. The second cartoon is by Steve Kelly of Creator Syndicate. It's a man, a woman in an office workspace. The man is getting a drink of water from the bubbler. And the woman has her coffee in her hand and she says, "Do you miss Stephen Colbert's show?" And the man turns to her and said, "Not anymore, but for years I made sure I missed it every night." Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Everybody's column. Bills ticket prices will exclude many. What's up with the high cost of tickets to the Bills games in the new, largely taxpayer-funded stadium? Blue-collar workers aren't the only ones who will be priced out of attending. We are now in an economic downturn caused by President Trump's war in Iran. All levels of workers are feeling the financial crunch. Why did I think that the Erie County government that played a significant role in planning and funding the new stadium might offer some protective restraints on ticket prices? I realize that it's too late to question why the new stadium has 11,000 fewer seats. It's not too late to question why so many fans will be unable to attend games because of the ticket price, or who or what is benefiting from high ticket costs. For many, the only chance to view the stadium will be a drive-by. This from Leona Lockwood of Lakeview.
Thank you, Larry. Improving cancer care for LGBTQ community. For many in the LGBTQ plus community, assessing health care has not always felt safe, inclusive, or welcoming. These experiences can lead people to delay care or avoid it altogether, including life-saving cancer screenings. At the Cancer Services Program of Erie County, that's CSP, Cancer Services Program, we are working to change that. We understand that screening needs are personal and depend on your body, age, and health history, not assumptions based on your identity. Whether you're a trans man who needs a cervical cancer screening or someone who's avoided the doctor entirely because of past negative experiences, the CSP will meet you where you are. Cancer does not discriminate, and access to care should not either. Screenings for breast, cervical, and colorectal cancer can save lives by finding cancer early, but only if people feel safe enough to get screened. That is why the CSP strives to remove barriers, whether financial, structural, or emotional, so that all people have the opportunity to make their health a priority. We also understand that the LGBTQ community faces risk for cancers that do not have routine screenings. The CSP can be your trusted entry point into a healthcare system that takes your whole health seriously. This Pride Month, we reaffirm our commitment to inclusive care. We encourage anyone who has been putting off a screening to know you are welcome here, your health matters, and you deserve care that respects who you are. Please reach out at cpswny.org. And this is written by Elisa Maluski of Buffalo. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Trained young hunters should be trusted. For the second time, Erie County Executive Mark Poloncarz has vetoed a law that would enable 12 and 13-year-olds to hunt deer with a firearm. Let's examine the veto decision by Poloncarz and what one could infer from it. What is he really saying? First, the decision says that the county executive has no confidence in the quality of the state hunter education program. Hunters of all ages who take this course are demonstrating a willingness to learn the responsibility, operation, safe handling of firearms, and the responsibility, ethics, and conduct of recreational sport hunting. Second, the decision indicates a lack of confidence in the ability of the volunteer instructors who teach these courses to convey this instruction, training, and responsibility. Third, this veto basically says that the 12 and 13-year-olds of Erie County are less responsible, capable, and qualified to conduct themselves appropriately in a recreational hunting setting than those same age groups in all but one other county in New York State. That decision should be left to the parent or guardian, not the county executive. Fourth, the county executive is casting that same doubt on the ability of the parent, mentor, or adult hunting companion required under the law to be in direct supervision and control of the young hunter while afield. I have confidence in all of the above. I believe that trained, responsible 12 and 13-year-olds should be afforded this opportunity, and I hope county legislators give consideration to override this veto. This from Wayne H. Schecker of Eden.
Thank you, Larry. You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. The time is 9:29 Some opinion columns. This one is another voice about pesticides. It's written by Mike Mooney, who is a Pittsburgh resident, husband and father of 4, and a Parkinson's News Today columnist. Pass legislation to ban paraquat in state. One of the crueler parts of Parkinson's is that it often arrives with a medical shrug. Mine came 6 years ago when I was 49. The word I was given was idiopathic. It sounds clinical. What it really means is, we do not know. That uncertainty follows you home. It sits with your spouse and children. It changes how families thinks about the past, the future, and ordinary jobs that once seemed harmless. I recently traveled to Albany to support legislation that would ban paraquat in New York. I went as a Rochester area resident living with Parkinson's. I also went as someone who knows what it's like to be a young worker around chemicals. In high school and college, I worked summers as a landscaper and chemical applicator. At the time, it felt normal. Hot days, long hours, mixing and spraying, then moving on to the next job. I trusted that if a chemical was legal to use, someone somewhere had decided it was safe enough. I cannot say paraquat caused my Parkinson's. I cannot even say with certainty whether paraquat was one of the products I handled. But I have tested negative for known genetic links, and like many people living with Parkinson's, I am left looking backward and asking what I was exposed to, what was known, and what might have been prevented. That is why this issue belongs in Western New York. Farm workers, landscapers, ground crews, rural people, rural families, and neighboring communities deserve protections. A 19-year-old summer employee should not have to understand neurotoxicology to be protected. A farm worker should not have to choose between a paycheck and future brain health. Paraquat is not an ordinary weed killer. The Environmental Protection Agency describes it as a highly toxic and restricted use, and notes that one small accidental sip can be fatal with no antidote. Paraquat has also been linked to increased Parkinson's risk and is banned in more than 70 countries. Senate Bill S9094A and Assembly Bill A10074A would prohibit the distribution, sale, offer for sale, and use of pesticide products containing paraquat. This is not anti-farmer, it is pro-worker, pro-family, pro-prevention. With the legislature scheduled to leave Albany in early June, lawmakers should pass S9094A and A10074A now and ban paraquat in New York. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. The following is from Daisy Hernandez, and she works at the Chicago Tribune. If DOJ can now take U.S. citizenship away, was it ever truly real? I grew up in a home of immigrants from Colombia, Cuba, and Peru, and ours was a mixed-status family. Some family members became naturalized citizens thanks to legislation for refugees. Others, such as my mother, were sponsored by spouses. Some, like me, were born here. We thought, and the media confirmed, that once it was acquired, citizenship was for life. But that's no longer the case. The Department of Justice recently announced that it would be in court to strip a dozen naturalized Americans of their citizenship, and the New York Times reported that the DOJ is directing regular prosecutions to target as many as 384 naturalized Americans. This means that the citizenship status of 26 million naturalized Americans in this country is no longer guaranteed. Americans are generally only in danger of losing their citizenship if they are found guilty of committing fraud in their naturalization application, but in January, President Trump told reporters that his administration was considering another factor: their countries of origin. Journalist Seth Fried Wessler found that people from Yemen, Somalia, and Iran make up only about 1% of the foreign-born population in the United States. But they were about 10% of the citizens the Trump administration tried to denaturalize in 2017 and 2018. Trump also identified the predominantly white countries from which he would like the United States to welcome immigrants: Norway, Sweden, and Denmark. During his first administration, Trump created the denaturalization section as part of the Justice Department. In 2020, while we hunkered down in home at fear of COVID-19, multiple federal agencies busied themselves sending this new unit the names of more than 500 people who could be investigated for citizenship fraud. Most infamously, Trump administration tried to strip a grandmother of her citizenship. Norma Bognono had been naturalized for more than a decade and had been living in the country since 1989. She had been convicted of a white-collar crime years after becoming a citizen. The Justice Department eventually dropped the case, but the point was clear. No one was safe from scrutiny. If citizenship could be taken away, was it ever real? Citizenship has been changed many times since the founding of the country. In 1790, Congress passed a federal law that only free white immigrants could naturalize as citizens. The Civil War led to the recognition of black Americans as citizens, but that status did not stop discrimination in voting, housing, education, or health care until the Civil Rights Movement. In the early 1900s, American women could lose their citizenship if they married Asian men who were not eligible to naturalize as citizens. In the 1930s, Mexican American citizens were deported from the United States as part of a program that forced expulsion of about 1 million Mexicans. In 1986, President Ronald Reagan signed legislation granting 3 million immigrants, mostly Mexican, a pathway to citizenship. President Joe Biden could have shut down the Justice Department's denaturalization section when he took the White House, but didn't. He simply renamed it the Enforcement Unit. In the coming months, we will need to take to social media and the streets to remind prosecutors for the Justice Department, as well as judges, that they do not have to obey orders motivated by racial bias. Because these are civil proceedings and targeted Americans will not have assigned lawyers, we will need to spend our money and time on legal organizations that will step up to defend these Americans. And wherever we find ourselves, we need to remind each other that the Americans being targeted are more than citizens. They are our neighbors. Linda?
Thank you, Larry. Some business and financial news. Big Tobacco benefits from new FDA rules. The FDA's new looser regulation of new vapes and nicotine pouches will potentially unleash hundreds more such products on the market in the coming weeks and months, according to 3 current and former Trump administration officials. The Food and Drug Administration said this month it will use enforcement discretion to look the other way when manufacturers sell unauthorized vaping products, as long as their license applications meet certain standards. It for years required a pre-marketing authorization for the products, partly to limit youth vape use. The Trump administration's swift policy change, announced days before FDA Commissioner Marty Makary resigned, circumvented months of public comment typical for such sweeping changes, 2 former FDA tobacco chiefs said, and raised questions about the risk to public health and consumers. Tobacco executives aggressively lobbied President Trump for change, including in a meeting this month where they argued that the FDA's privacy policy allowed a vast illegal market of mostly Chinese vapes, according to one of the officials briefed on the meeting. About 100 to 200 products could immediately benefit from the new policy, the official said. A source briefed on the FDA's process said about 1,000 applications are at the scientific review stage, indicating they already presented enough data to be considered for the new policy. The FDA change mirrors a long-standing ask by industry, said Brian King, who ran the FDA Center for Tobacco Products and is now at the Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids. The group said the new guidance puts children at risk by allowing the legal sale of more flavored vapes, which can be enticing to them. About 1.4 million U.S. teens, or about 5%, admitted vaping last year, according to FDA data, down from a peak of more than 6 million in 2019. Clearly, we want to keep nicotine out of the hands of young people, but for adults who smoke, we need alternatives, said Vaughn Rees of Harvard University School of Public Health, who said he does not receive industry funds. Health and Human Services spokesman Andrew Nixon said the new guidance strengthens enforcement against the flood of illegal and unauthorized nicotine products and supports a more orderly transition to a regulated marketplace. President Trump consistently pledged to expand access to vapes and nicotine pouches in light of an abundance of evidence finding that these products are beneficial for Americans trying to quit smoking, White House spokesman Ku Desai said in a statement. Tobacco companies and market research firm Euromonitor say at least 70% of U.S. vape sales are illegal, with one estimate valuing them at $8 million in 2024. Trump's interest in flavored vapes dates back to his first term, and he still believes vapes are critical to maintaining support among young men, according to 3 officials. His first FDA commissioner, Scott Gottlieb, proposed banning most flavored cartridge-based e-cigarettes after vape brand Juul turbocharged youth use. Trump initially allowed the policy to move forward, but reversed course after Gottlieb left and blasted then Health Secretary Alex Azar for banning fruit-flavored vapes, fearing it would hurt him in the 2020 presidential election, according to a former official. Since 2024, tobacco companies and other industry groups worked to curry favor with Trump via donations to his campaign, inauguration, and ballroom, official records show, as well as via influential connections in Washington. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Stocks face fresh test as bond yields stir concern. The S&P 500 on Friday clinched its 8th straight weekly gain. The index's longest winning streak since 2023, and stocks kept rising into Tuesday afternoon. The reasons might sound familiar: strong corporate earnings and AI enthusiasm, as investors look past concerns about the war with Iran. But in the bond market, bad vibes are shaking investors and could check stocks' ability to keep climbing. U.S. Treasury yields, which help set interest rates across the economy, are trading at their highest levels in a year. Yields rise when bond prices fall. Traders now expect the Federal Reserve to keep interest rates on hold in the coming months, with a chance of a rate hike later in this year, according to CME FedWatch. That's because the Strait of Hormuz remains closed, oil prices are at 4-year highs, and inflation expectations are moving higher. Bond yields pose challenge. Higher Treasury yields mean more expensive loans and mortgage rates, burdening consumers when sentiment is at record lows, according to the University of Michigan's long-running survey of consumers. When Treasury yields rise above 1-year highs, it gets harder for the stock market to ignore. It gets harder for everyone to ignore, said Rob Williams, Chief Investment Strategist at Sage Advisory. It affects housing affordability. It affects everything. Corporate America continues to post strong profits. The S&P 500 is set to post the highest quarterly earnings growth rate since 2021, according to FactSet. The S&P 500 has clinched 18 record highs this year and is less than 0.5% away from hitting another. The AI build-out and tax cuts from President Trump's One Big Beautiful Bill Act have helped push shares higher, with gains concentrated in technology and AI-related stocks. An uneven rally. The S&P is weighted by market value, meaning the more valuable the company, the more influence it has on the index. Since the war with Iran began, the S&P 500 is up about 8.6%. But across that same period, an equal-weighted version of the S&P is up less than 1%. It's just an increasingly narrow set of things that are working, said Jeff Klingelhofer, portfolio manager at investment firm Aristotle. For now, at least, the market is looking to only those things, and perhaps not appropriately looking towards some of the warning signs. Meanwhile, since March 30th, the 10-year yield has risen from 4.34 to about 4.56%. Klingelhofer said he recognizes the tailwinds for stocks, including AI, but he said he was surprised by the way investors are looking past the way higher yields could strain consumers, despite warning signs like auto loan delinquencies. I don't think markets are appropriately focused on all of the potential headwinds, Klingelhofer said. Bond investors are demanding higher yields to compensate for the risk of inflation, sparked by the nearly 3-month-old U.S.-Israeli war with Iran and worries about ballooning government debt in some countries. Meanwhile, greed is driving the stock market, according to CNN's Fear and Greed Index. The index has pointed to greed since April 15th, when the S&P 500 hit its first record high since the war began. Resilient economy. Treasury yields typically move based on expectations for inflation and economic growth. While inflation is unnerving some investors, economic growth is also a factor boosting yields and stocks. Steep moves in interest rates have the potential to undermine consumer resilience, but the current margin, while notable, is less immediately impactful on the average American, said Kriti Gupta, a global investment strategist at J.P. Morgan Private Bank. The stock market could shrug off the rise in yields if investors focus on the strong economy. The picture becomes more nerve-wracking if they focus instead on stubborn inflation, with a fine economy but weary consumer. It all comes back to oil prices and the Strait of Hormuz. If oil prices continue to trade near $100 per barrel, up more than 68% since the start of the year, inflation concerns will persist and yields could rise further. Linda?
Thank you, Larry. AI unlikely to spur jobs apocalypse. OpenAI CEO Sam Altman said on Tuesday the rapid development and adoption of AI would not lead to a global jobs apocalypse, and the technology has not claimed as many white-collar jobs as he had feared. Speaking virtually at Commonwealth Bank of Australia conference in Sydney, Altman said he was initially concerned about the impact AI would have on global employment levels. He said he and his executives had been roughly right on the technological predictions made by OpenAI when it launched ChatGPT in 2022. But he said they were pretty wrong on the social and economic implications. I'm delighted to be wrong about this. I thought there would have been more impact on entry-level white-collar jobs being eliminated by now than has actually happened, Altman said. I now believe I understand more about why it hasn't, and I'm obviously grateful, but that is an area where my intuitions were just off. People are like, oh, you could have saved the world, a lot of fear-mongering and a lot of gloom and doom, but at the time I was like, I see this as a real risk we probably should talk about, and it still may. A growing number of global companies, including HSBC and Amazon, have announced some jobs within their companies are being replaced by AI. OpenAI is preparing to confidentially file for a U.S. initial public offering in the coming weeks, Reuters reported last week, citing a source familiar with the matter. Altman said he had realized that even though AI was taking on an increasingly active role in many industries and jobs, there was still a human part of employment that could not be replaced. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. What do we have here? We have the U.S. Supreme Court declined on Tuesday to hear a bid by Meta Platforms to avoid a lawsuit brought by Vermont's Attorney General accusing the company of designing its Instagram social media apps to be addictive to young users, as high technologies face mounting legal risks over child and teen safety. And this one from Reuters. Addiction. Social media ranks alongside smoking as a danger to children. Senior British doctors said Tuesday as they urged lawmakers to tackle the harm that they say excessive screen time is causing to young people. Linda?
Thank you, Larry. As part of our newspaper reading, we now present the day's death listings. If you need further information on any of these names, call us at 716-821-5555. That's 716-821-5555. Anthony, Mary T. Bishop, Richard. Bork, Mary T. Conta, Mary Lynn. Corcoran, Marilyn A., née Milks. Gallagher, Rita, née Brown. Kwiatkowski, Mary Ann, née Osika. Papademetriou, Patricia C., née Argentieri. Priori, Rosemary L., née Dulce. Rummings, Gilbert L. Smith, John E. Stahl, Susan W. née Weisbeck. Wigand, Robert H. Wilcox, Thomas M. Wise, Randy. And Sonny Rollins, a sublime tenor, saxophonist, and one of the last iconic figures of the golden age of post-World War II jazz, died Monday at his home in Woodstock. Diagnosed years ago with pulmonary fibrosis, he was 95. And Doug McCain, 66, Navy and airline pilot, son of late Senator, TV personality and author Meghan McCain, is mourning big brother Doug McCain, the eldest child of the late Senator John McCain, after his sudden death at age 66. If you need further information on any of these names, give us a call at 716-821-5555. That's 716-821-5555. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Royal Stars. Happy birthday for Wednesday, May 27, 2026. You're practical, dynamic, and innovative. You easily absorb the intricacies of complex, abstract theories. This is a year of service, perhaps service to family. Aries, 4 stars. Today, you have to go more than halfway when dealing with others. However, there's a moon alert in effect all day, which clouds issues with everything. Tonight, intense discussions. Taurus, 3 stars. Be careful because fiery Mars is in your sign, boosting your energy and pushing your drive for action. This is all well and good for others, but not today. Tonight, listen and cooperate. Gemini, 4 stars. Most of this day is a moon alert, which is a poor time to make decisions or shop. However, it is a marvelous time for creativity, having fun, and schmoozing with friends. Tonight, work and get organized. Cancer, this is a relatively easygoing day with 3 stars. Focus on home and family. Be aware that today's moon alert restricts spending to food and gas. Take it easy tonight. Socialize. Leo, 4 stars. You'll enjoy socializing with others, especially younger people. However, be careful because today is a moon alert. Tonight, relax. Virgo, 3 stars. Be careful because today the moon is in your money house. However, there is a moon alert all day. Resist temptations to spend money, except for food and gas. Tonight, intense discussions. Libra, 3 stars. For most of this day, the moon is in your sign, undergoing a moon alert. You might feel indecisive and at loose ends. You also might be tempted to make decisions you will regret. Tonight, check your money. Scorpio, 3 stars. Enjoy the time alone today if you can swing this. Be aware that most of this day is a moon alert, which means it's a poor time to shop except for food and gas. Tonight, you win. Sagittarius, this is a lovely day to schmooze with friends and talk to groups. However, do not volunteer for anything. Tonight, solitude. Capricorn, 3 stars. This is a tricky day because you're high vis. People notice you more than usual. This means they'll notice if you make a mistake or a bad decision. Tonight, be friendly. Aquarius, 4 stars. You enjoy time spent with friends, and today is an ideal day to do this. In particular, you'll be attracted to people from other cultures and different backgrounds. Tonight, you are noticed. And Pisces, 3 stars. This is a poor day to make decisions about wills, inheritance, or shared property. Tonight, explore.
Moon alert, huh?
Yeah. Oh, reminds me of those days on the school bus.
Hints from Heloise. Try this solution on your garden plants. Dear Heloise, there's an old recipe that my great-grandfather used to use in his garden, and it made everything grow quickly and in abundance. It was lost for a long time, but we found the recipe in an old book that he once owned. I used it for the first time this past year, and my vegetable garden has never looked healthier or given me such a large yield of tomatoes, cucumbers, and carrots. It's very simple and costs less than $2 to make. Get 1 packet of baking yeast, the kind you bake with. Mix it into a large bucket of very warm water, stir well, add 1 tablespoon of sugar and stir. Let it sit for 2 hours. Add 1 gallon of additional water and 1 capful of cider vinegar. Then water your garden.
Spider vinegar.
Yeah. Thanks, Larry.
Oh, wow.
Okay, that's from Nancy. A place to call home. Dear Heloise, this letter is in response to the lady in Colorado Springs, Colorado, who discouraged people to bring in stray cats. I can't tell you the number of stray cats I brought into my home and my heart, and they've become wonderful pets. I never had a problem with any of them. I took them to the vet myself to be spayed or neutered and vaccinated. If animal control comes out and takes a cat away, it has a 99% chance of being euthanized. Very few adult cats are adopted at animal shelters. Most of these cats are extremely loving, and I was so happy that I gave one a home. I simply skipped the middleman and adopted these wonderful cats on my own. I don't have to worry about them being euthanized at a shelter. I have many friends who've adopted strays and given them love for many years. They gave the animal a chance to have a loving home, and that's from Sheila. Sheila is an advocate for animal welfare and a member of the Feral Cat Coalition. I've taken feral cats and lost dogs into my home. Sometimes the results weren't what I hoped for, but most times it was wonderful. I believe everyone needs to get their pets neutered and spayed, as well as push for stricter laws for animal abusers and people who abandon their pets. The overpopulation of cats and dogs is due to people, not the animals themselves. And that's from Heloise. And auto supply store hint. Dear Heloise, I just read a letter about reading the car owner's manual first for directions on how to change a headlight on your car before going to a mechanic. I learned that auto supply stores will usually do it free for you if you buy the headlamp from them. There are some exceptions. They've also replaced my windshield wipers. I love this service as I am mechanically challenged. And they are also kind and provide excellent service. And that's from Julie. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. U.S. Space Force gives SpaceX $2.29 billion contract. Washington. The U.S. Space Force awarded SpaceX a $2.29 billion contract to build a secure, high-speed satellite communications network to connect military sensors and weapons platforms across the globe, the service announced Tuesday. The fixed-price, non-traditional contracting agreement covers the Space Data Network (SDN) backbone, a resilient network architecture providing high-capacity and low-latency data transport for the military. And Blue Origin Astrolab awarded NASA contracts. NASA awarded contracts to space firms including Jeff Bezos, Blue Origin, and Astrolab to send robotic landers, rovers, and drones to support the upcoming lunar exploration missions, the U.S. Space Agency said Tuesday. It awarded Astrolab $219 million and Lunar Outposts $220 million to build and deliver lunar terrain vehicles. And from the District of Columbia, Trump seeks NDAs in leak crackdown. The Trump administration is moving to create government-wide non-disclosure agreements for federal workers after a number of high-profile and unauthorized leaks in recent months. The Office of Personnel Management, which serves as the federal government's human resources arm, proposed a standardized NDA form Tuesday and said agencies that use it would administer it to both new hires and current employees. The proposal specifically mentions leaks related to the American military raid in Venezuela in January and planned enforcement actions by immigration agents in the U.S. OPM's notice sent to the Office of Federal Register Tuesday is a proposal, and the agency is seeking public comment on the scope, form, and enforcement of any non-disclosure agreements.
Thank you, Larry. You're listening to a reading of articles from the Buffalo News for Wednesday, May 27th on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. We'll return for more readings after the short break. Your readers today are
Larry Beenan
and Linda Ranella.
If you're listening to this publication online, you're probably using our website, a podcast player like Spotify or iTunes, a streaming service like Siro, or a smart speaker. Did you know that we now have a dedicated app that can be downloaded to any mobile device, like a smartphone or tablet, for free? App users can conveniently access our live stream and any episode of our podcast easier than ever. To download the app, just type NFRRS in the search window in the Apple App Store or in the Google Play Store. Contact us anytime if you have any questions by calling 716-821-5555, extension 5. Thank you.
We'll continue now with our reading of articles from today's Buffalo News. Your readers are
Linda Ranella.
and Larry Beanan.
On to some local and regional news. Man shot after stabbing cop charged in knife point robbery. The man shot by police on Broadway on Saturday afternoon after stabbing an officer in the torso has been charged in an unrelated knife point robbery as he remains under investigation for his skirmish with police as well as an earlier stabbing incident, Buffalo's police commissioner said Tuesday. Derek M. Harris, 35, was shot twice on Broadway after scuffling with two police officers attempting to question him about reported stabbing that occurred on Friday night. Police Commissioner Eric Shields said Harris was wounded when he was shot twice in the stomach area. He was taken to Erie County Medical Center for treatment where he remains hospitalized. The officer who was stabbed twice in the torso was treated and released from ECMC on Saturday, Shields said. According to the body-worn camera footage released by the police department, the officer who was stabbed is John Simonian, who joined the department in 2017. The investigation into Saturday's chaotic events, visible in footage from Simonian's camera and that of his partner, Officer Joshua Saplinski, helped police put a timeline together of the incidents that led to the shooting. On Saturday afternoon, Shields said a patrol car was flagged down by a pedestrian on Dreschler Street near the corner of Broadway. The pedestrian told Simonian and Slupinski that the man had stabbed her boyfriend in an apartment on Friday night and that the assailant, Harris, was nearby. She pointed him out to police, who sped to Harris's location. When the two officers got out of their car and approached Harris, they saw he had a pair of scissors in one hand and a box cutter in the other. As one officer approached him, Harris could be seen in the video swinging his hand at Simonian, who can be heard saying he'd been stabbed. Slupinski used a taser on Harris, who fell to the ground. In the video, Harris could be seen continuing to struggle with officers who were trying to handcuff him. At various times during the video, Harris continued to struggle while saying, "Kill me, kill me." Harris managed to get to his feet and run across Broadway with both police officers in pursuit. Police alleged Harris reached for an officer's gun. The body-worn camera footage shows Harris with his arm outstretched in his hand in the vicinity of a police officer who had his gun drawn. Seconds later, two other police cars arrived, bringing more officers to the scene, who subdued Harris and put him in the back of a police SUV. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. New county law blocks collection of biometric data. Traditional photo and video recording will still be permitted. The use of facial recognition to help identify shoplifters at Wegmans supermarkets has morphed into a new law that will bar local commercial businesses from collecting biometric data on customers. The Erie County Executive Mark Poloncarz on Tuesday signed into law the Consumer Protection Measure, which passed 7-4 on party lines in the county legislature last month. Poloncarz said the law makes Erie County the first county in New York State and possibly in the nation to enact such a restriction. Biometric data includes information such as facial recognition, voice recognition, and fingerprint, eye scans, and gestures. Businesses have 30 days to comply with the law, which requires them to disclose whether they use or collect biometric data. Businesses that do collect such information must certify that they have destroyed it. Just recently, I had a credit card that was fraudulently used, Poloncarz said. I'm waiting for the replacement card, actually. I think we've all gone through this. They were able to cancel the purchase, and I will not be held responsible for that purchase, and I will get a new credit card from the credit card company. If that happens with your face, if that happens with your biometric data, it's impossible to get rid of that. While the legislature did not give bipartisan approval to the new Biometrics Transparency and Privacy Act, Poloncarz said he believes it has widespread support from residents regardless of political affiliation. I don't think we received a single comment against this from a member of the public, he said, and I think that shows that this is something the public is very concerned about. The law has multiple provisions. It applies to companies and organizations, both for-profit and non-profit, that provide goods and services to the public. It prohibits these companies, commercial establishments, from collecting, storing, procuring, using, or selling, otherwise monetizing biometric data in commercial settings. Any establishment that already collects and stores biometric data must disclose it to the county's Division of Consumer Protection and detail how the company will permanently delete or destroy all such biometric information, then follow up with an affidavit within 30 days attesting that all biometric data was removed. Violation notices would be sent to first-time offenders. Establishments that do not take corrective action within 30 days may be subject to civil penalties of $1,000 a day if they continue to collect biometric data. Establishments that fail to destroy biometric data they already have may be subjected to fines of up to $5,000 a day. The law includes multiple exemptions meant to exclude many common instances of biometric use that are already broadly accepted. This includes the use of biometric data by governments and for compliance with federal, state, or local laws. Banks and other financial institutions are not subject to the law. The law does not apply to anyone using biometric data to access phones and other electronic devices for their personal use or for employer-issued communication. It also wouldn't apply to automatic face detection services used by social media applications. In addition, Poloncarz said Tuesday the law does not apply to casinos, which are regulated by the state. Nothing in the law prevents an establishment from continuing to use more traditional photo and video recording, such as for customer surveillance and shoplifting deterrence, as long as those images or videos are not sold to third parties or further analyzed by software or other applications for biometric data collection. Proponents say the law should primarily affect larger big box and chain stores that have the resources to invest in biometric tracking pools. They point to weak regulations, lack of consent, and transparency regarding the use of human and behavioral data markers and the potential for hacking of stored biometric data, which is permanent and unchangeable. A county biometrics law was originally proposed by legislators Lindsay Lorigo, Republican West Seneca, and Lawrence Dupree, Democrat Buffalo, to require disclosure to consumers and to ban on selling or sharing that data with a third party unless required for legal or government purposes. However, Dupree later submitted a more restrictive version of the law which requires a ban on the collection and storage of consumer biometric data, saying that's what residents really want. Lorigo and her fellow Republicans opposed the measures, calling it unrealistic and difficult to enforce, given the pervasive availability and use of such tools. The story came to light when a New York City law forced Wegmans downstate locations to disclose that this company used facial recognition and recognition as part of its anti-theft program in a small number of its stores. Wegmans has declined to say whether biometric data is used in its Western New York area stores, citing security reasons. Poloncarz says the county has not heard from Wegmans regarding the new law. Its official adoption on Tuesday will require disclosure of the county's Division of Consumer Protection. The county has established a website for all businesses subject to the new law, erie.gov/biometrics. All businesses are required to comply with the law and self-report. There is no current plan for the county to proactively reach out to all businesses to determine compliance with the biometrics law, county officials said. But for future complaints to the Division of Consumer Protection would be investigated. The county's biometrics law was patterned off one adopted in Portland, Oregon, Poloncarz said. The Syracuse Common Council approved a similar law last week. We are hearing from other governments that are interested in passing similar laws themselves, he said.
Linda? Thank you, Larry. Excuse me. Council, mayor agreed to trim tax levy hike to 19%. The Buffalo Common Council and Mayor Sean Ryan's administration have agreed to a package of budget amendments that will lower the tax levy increase to 19%. Though through increases to some projected revenue lines and decreases on spending on heavy equipment and other items, the council and Ryan's team were able to decrease the increase in the tax levy from 25.8% to 19%, a total reduction of more than $11 million in revenue raised through property taxes from Ryan's proposed budget. The package was approved in a 5-4 vote with Council Majority Leader Leah Halton Pope, Council President Pro Tempore Zanetta Everhart, North District Council Member Joseph Gollenbeck, and Lovejoy District Council Member Brian Bowman voting no. Fillmore District Council Member Mitchell Nowakowski, who voted in favor of the Ryan administration amendment package, said he has been calling for a change in city budgeting practices of former Mayor Byron Brown's administration for years. He reiterated that and the large tax increase is necessary to close the city's $103 million structural deficit and a need to continue to fund services that residents expect. Would I have loved to have gone down to less than 19%? Nowakowski said absolutely, but city has to operate, has to provide services and programs at the same time. Council members initially balked at the 25.8% increase proposed by Ryan, with many expressing concerns about their constituents' ability to absorb such a dramatic increase. And several council members have been frustrated with the Ryan administration during his first budget, with some saying that administration was slow to produce important information or that he felt misled after Ryan's initial projections of a levy increase of 15% rose by more than 10% points. Ryan and council members worked through the weekend to come up with the changes to reduce the tax increase, including increasing projected sales tax revenues from Erie County by $1.6 million, increasing the projected revenue raised through the sale of city parking ramps by $4.8 million, increasing the projected revenue raising through parking and traffic enforcement by $4 million, reducing the amount of money set aside for capital budget reserves by $5.5 million to zero, decreasing funds for LED light conversion by $1.6 million, decreasing funds for the building department to repair city-owned property by $1.2 million, decreasing funds for Department of Public Works vehicles and equipment by $2 million. Several council members had discussed rolling back personnel changes they unanimously approved in December, creating a 4-deputy mayor system that bumped their salaries to $200,000 each. They also had looked at bringing the police commissioner's salary back down from $175,000 from $250,000 and rolling back other pay bumps in leadership positions after approving the raises in the same package. But Ryan administration officials have said that the moves actually saved the city more than $250,000 through the elimination of other positions. The council ultimately did not make any adjustments to salaries, although they did eliminate a vacant position the Ryan administration added in the proposed spending plan, Director of Special Events, saving the city $81,861. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Librarians, UB students team up to help homeless. New program aims to connect people with essential services. Some of the most challenging times for librarians at the Central Library downtown occur when someone approaches them minutes before closing and says, "I need a place to stay tonight," said librarian Maria Lowe. It happens more often than one might guess. Maybe they've been at the library all day and it just occurred to them that it's closing, Lowe said. Maybe they're uncomfortable and leery of approaching librarians until they realize they're in a situation and need to figure it out. The downtown librarians keep lists of shelter services and resources to direct patrons to, but sometimes there is a process associated with them. I would just get on the phone and start calling my list and just saying, "I've got somebody standing here. We close in 15 minutes. What can we do? Do you have space? If you don't have space, what can you recommend?" Lowe said. The public library has become a safe haven, a kind of shelter itself for homeless people, particularly during the daytime hours when homeless shelters commonly prohibit people from the premises. Homeless patrons bring other needs to the library as well. This includes asking for help filling out applications for SNAP benefits and other forms of public assistance. These tasks take time, knowledge, and staffing that the library and librarians don't necessarily have, which leaves the institution and its people stretched thin. Our job is to connect people to resources, and we're very good at that. But what we're really missing sometimes is the expertise or the skills to really help people in depth and time, said Lowe, Assistant Deputy Director at the Buffalo and Erie County Public Library System. Help is on the way. A pilot program called Pathways to Stability will launch with the goal of supporting the homeless who patronize the downtown library. The program begins this summer and will be run in collaboration with students from the University of Buffalo's School of Social Work and Public Health. The initiative aims to connect more people to services to reduce reliance on emergency services and also to provide social work students with real-world experience. The thing I'm really looking forward to with this program is that these folks will be able to not only give information, the students will, have a more intimate knowledge of what can help people specifically, said Lowe, who oversees parts of the Central Library and 8 other branches in the city. Strain and stress. A UB survey of librarians revealed the challenges librarians face regularly when trying to assist homeless patrons. We asked them, what are the most common unmet needs in the library that also cause strain or stress on the staff? They pointed to patrons who were experiencing homelessness, who were navigating health challenges or needing shelter or needing access to internet, said D. Michael Applegarth, assistant professor of social work at UB, who is heading the project. Librarians want to engage. That's why they're librarians, Applegarth said. While they're happy to help homeless patrons and striving to help, they just don't have the capacity to do so. Libraries started seeing a gradual increase in homeless patrons about a decade ago. Once COVID hit, we could really see an uptick in the need just because a lot of places weren't open anymore. A recent report on homelessness in the region said there is a lack of available housing and an increase in people living on the brink due to financial and medical hardships. The region saw a 24% increase in the number of homeless people compared with last year. The program, the Central Library Pilot Project, is part of UB's broader efforts to help underserved communities. That includes 2 street medicine programs that send students into medical residents into the streets to provide care to the homeless in the city of Buffalo and throughout Erie and Cattaraugus counties. Final details and logistics for the library pilot are being worked out, organizers said, but the program should start next month, with the students being placed in the library for 7 to 10 weeks. 2 of UB's School of Social Work and 2 from the School of Public Health will be embedded at the library about twice a week for a couple of hours at a time. Working alongside the librarians, the students will help those who are experiencing homelessness with resources like access to the internet and assist with things like filling out forms on the computer, applying for food stamps or supplemental security income, SSI. They will set up tables with different agencies for those seeking shelter and housing. That could be anywhere from answering questions about resources to helping someone build a resume to whatever else folks need. So we're trying to train students in an array of topics so that they're culturally aware but also sensitive to the trauma in which many people have experienced who are part of the population. Some of the students have previous experience working with substance abuse in the criminal legal system, including Kaylee Hobie, a dual degree MBA and Masters of Social Work student at UB. I think to really understand the community of Buffalo and what people here need, we really have to go out into the community and ask the people that have barriers to accessing whatever services it is they need. The librarians will continue to connect people to resources, but the pilot program provides an opportunity to direct unhoused individuals to people who can give them more in-depth help. Applegarth hopes the program will be a sustainable resource for the community that could become a model to be used in other places. Similar programs have been established at other libraries in the country. The Minneapolis Central Library, for instance, employs licensed clinical social workers and outreach workers to support patrons experiencing homelessness, mental health crisis, or in need of community resources. Services include housing support, mental health referrals, and assisting with basic needs.
Thank you, Larry. You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. The time is 10:19. On to sports. Sports shorts. First one is Court Punts Appeal. The U.S. Supreme Court on Tuesday turned away a bid by the National Football League to move a black coach's racial discrimination claims out of federal court and into an arbitration proceeding controlled by the NFL. The justices declined to hear an appeal by the league, and 3 of its teams filed under a lower court ruled that the NFL cannot force Brian Flores, the former Miami Dolphins head coach and current Minnesota Vikings defensive coordinator, to arbitrate workplace claims bias through a process overseen by NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell. The teams involved in the appeal were the New York Giants, Denver Broncos, and Houston Texans. Flores, 45, has accused the NFL, the most popular professional sports league in the United States, of systematic discrimination against black coaches. David Gottlieb, a lawyer for Flores, welcomed the court's decision to turn away the league's appeal. The NFL must now accept that the commissioner cannot be the arbitrator over discrimination claims against the league and its teams, Gottlieb said. We look forward to litigating those claims in court. Flores alleged that during his career he was asked to have sham interviews with the Giants and Broncos merely to satisfy a 2003 NFL policy called the Rooney Rule, requiring that minorities be interviewed for coaching jobs. The NFL adopted the Rooney Rule in 2003 in light of the historically low number of minorities in NFL head coaching positions. 2 more black coaches, former Arizona Cardinals head coach Steve Wilks and longtime former NFL assistant coach Ray Horton, later joined Flores as plaintiffs in the lawsuit. And Pegula falls in big upset. Kimberly Burrell's first ever French Open victory races the upset of the day as the Australian took down number 5 seed Jessica Pegula 1-6, 6-3, 6-3 on Tuesday in first round action at the French Open in Paris. Burrell, ranked number 83 in the world, saved 7 of 12 break points while sending Pegula to her first round loss at Roland Garros since 2020. Larry? Yeah.
Thank you, Linda. Shoot to thrill. Hellenius' performance in playoffs sets bright future for Sabres rookie center. Editor's note, this is the first in a series that examines 4 up-and-coming players for the Buffalo Sabres and how they could impact the lineup in 26-27. Jason Zucker didn't play on a line with Konsta Hellenius until well into the Stanley Cup playoffs, but the Buffalo Sabres left wing found out this much about Hellenius, a rookie center from Finland. He brought a youthful joy to the room during a tough series, and I think it was a great piece to add for us, Zucker said. Tage Thompson didn't have any level of familiarity with Hellenius until he joined the Sabres as a call-up from Rochester of the American Hockey League in January. But the center quickly made an impression on Thompson, a 9-year NHL veteran and assistant captain. For being such a young guy, the way he plays, the game is so mature. Thompson said, he's got incredible skill and ability to make plays and score goals. But the maturity of his game is pretty remarkable, honestly. To be thrown into a playoff series like that and to be rock solid was pretty impressive. He's going to be a big piece for us moving forward. The Sabres got more than a good glimpse of Hellenius, the team's first-round pick in the 2024 NHL Draft, in only 13 regular season and playoff games. All of what Zucker and Thompson saw from Hellenius in the short time should bode well for the Sabres' depth, skill, and experience at center if Hellenius makes the roster for 26-27. Hellenius scored a goal and had 3 assists in 9 regular season games with the Sabres and scored 2 goals in 4 playoff games. Hellenius was the number 14 pick in the 2014 draft, has spent much of the last 2 regular seasons with Rochester, but his productivity in his short time with the Sabres in 25-26 likely will make an impact on the team's depth at center. Kulich missed all but 12 games, and that's Yuri Kulich and also Josh Norris were other centers. Kulich missed all but 12 games due to blood clots. Norris scored 13 goals with 21 assists and had a face-off percentage, but 49.5% was limited to 44 regular season games and 10 postseason games due to various injuries and illnesses, including an upper body injury which he sustained in the season opener October 9th and a rib injury he sustained January 14th. Sabres coach Lindy Ruff recalled his first conversations with former Sabres general manager Kevin Adams after Ruff rejoined as coach Among the players, Adams forecasted to have bright future with the Sabres: defenseman Matthias Samuelsson, forwards Jack Quinn, Noah Ostlund, and Hellenius. Players like this are going to be really good players. I didn't know a lot about, Ruff said of Hellenius, who was on an entry-level contract with an average annual value of $950,000 through the 27-28 season. He said, "These players will be the guys that are going to help you win." Hellenius spent the bulk of the season with Rochester, but both times he joined the Sabres, he did so emphatically. He scored his first NHL game as part of a 3-point game in a 5-3 win January 20th at Nashville. Then the Sabres got a close-up look at Hellenius in the Stanley Cup playoffs, particularly in their final 4 games of a second-round series against the Canadiens. Called up on April 29th to join the Black Aces, the Sabres practice squad for the playoffs, Hellenius set a baseline for himself when he went into the lineup. That came after Ruff shuffled the Sabres lines ahead of Game 4 on May 12th against the Canadiens, slotting Hellenius at center on a line with Zucker at left wing and Quinn at right wing. "I went back to playing in the NHL a little bit better," Hellenius said. "Tried to get better every day there. And we had a great team in Rochester, too. If I get a chance to play, I just want to show that I can help." Face-offs will be one area where Hellenius will have to make gains at the NHL level. He had a face-off percentage of 41.7, 10 wins, 14 losses in 9 regular season games, and was at 30.3, 10 wins, 23 losses in 4 playoff games. What helped Hellenius develop? Working with Rochester assistant Vaclav Prospal, a former NHL left wing who helped Hellenius change one of his innate habits: pass first, shoot second. "Vinny pushed me to shoot every time you have a chance," Hellenius said. "That's a big thing because he wants us to shoot a lot in Rochester. If you get a chance, you can score and give us a shot. Sometimes the pass is not easy, so you get a better chance to score if you shoot. Play fast, and if you get a chance to shoot, you've got to shoot." Michael Leone, Rochester's head coach, also emphasized shooting to Hellenius. It paid off for Hellenius at the NHL level as he scored 21 goals and 42 assists in 63 games, including 9 power play goals and 17 power play assists. "That's how I'm going to play, fast and physical," Hellenius said. "It's pushed me hard every day to try and get better." The first year in the NHL in 2024 was really hard. Everything was new for me: the coaches, the playing style, everything. The second year was so much easier. Overall, I'm happy to be here. Linda?
Thank you, Larry. Leonhard takes steady approach to defense. Jim Leonhard has a vision for the Buffalo Bills defense, but first-year defensive coordinator said he also knows that to be most successful, his vision must be fluid over time. What it looks like in week 1 might not be what it looks like in week 10. I think that's going to be a good thing, Leonhard said Tuesday, but one thing will stay consistent throughout it all: Leonhard himself. "He's cool, man," cornerback Maxwell Harrison said of Leonhard. "He's a geek with the football stuff, man. He's a genius, man, but he's cool. He's about his business." Hired this offseason after working his way up with the Denver Broncos, Leonhard is now putting his fingerprints on the Bills' defense. Eventually, he'll show a little more of his personality, but right now, Leonhard is focused on learning the people around him in Buffalo first. "I like to read a room," Leonhard said. "I like to sit back, and the more I learn about these guys, the more I learn how to be more vocal and more energetic with them. I'm kind of seeing where they're at. It's just my personality and my nature. I'm not going to say a whole lot unless I have to." But he is installing his defense and giving players plenty to think about as OTAs continue in Orchard Park. "The times we talk has been about ball," second-year defensive lineman TJ Sanders said. "The message he's preaching is so ball-oriented, like running after the ball, punching after the ball, doing anything with the ball. The ball is everything. And just the way he approaches it, I feel like the fire you see, it doesn't really come from his actions, but I kind of see it in his eyes. When he talks to us, I can feel the message that he's really trying to relay." A large part of the way Leonhard coaches dates to his playing days, which included 2 stints with the Buffalo Bills at safety. Leonhard, a former walk-on at Wisconsin, had a 10-year, 16 career as an NFL safety, breaking in with the Bills from 2005 to 07 and playing again with the Bills in 2013. Overlook me if you want to, but I've always had that kind of chip on my shoulder, so carried that as a coach because I think it's important to be who you are, Leonhardt said. If I'm trying to give a message, I think guys understand that it's real, whether it's motivational or kind of philosophically, big picture, what I believe in the defense or culture and team building. I think when they know when I bring something to a meeting, they know I mean it. Leonhardt previously served as a defense coordinator at the college level at Wisconsin, where he was also eventually interim head coach. He then had a year-long stint at Illinois as a senior defensive analyst before jumping back to the NFL in 2024 with Denver. When he looked at his trajectory, he wanted to pause and give himself more time to learn. I kind of intentionally took a step back because I felt like I had skipped a few steps in the process to get where I was, Leonhardt said. It's exciting to get in front of the room, coach the coaches, leading the staff that way, rather than supporting a defensive coordinator or just supporting a head coach. So that's been exciting for me. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Bill's Stadium is nearly substantially complete. Though not all work is finished, building will soon be occupied. The Buffalo Bills' new stadium is just a few days away from substantial completion. The Bills and their project construction manager expect June 1st to be the big day. But what exactly does it mean to be substantially complete? It means it will be going from a construction site to a building that can be occupied, but that doesn't mean all the stadium work is done. For a project to be considered substantially complete, it means that all life safety standards have been met on site and the public can safely occupy the building. Once that has been established, a temporary certificate of occupancy is granted. That allows the Bills to start getting their football staff and other departments and operations and teams into the building to understand how it functions. And while Gurbain-Tilbury will begin winding down on the project, the construction company will keep working on final touches and last-minute items through the Bills' regular season home opener on September 17th. What it does not mean is that we are completely done with everything on this project. There is still going to be work going on actively throughout the summer. Stadium is 96% complete. The project to build the more than 60,000-seat open-air stadium is now 96%, and the Bills do not see any impediments to being issued their temporary certificate of occupancy around June 1st. Not unless something unexpected comes up. The Bills actually have until July 1st to reach substantial completion as part of an agreement with the state. The project is on schedule, and we're expecting to wrap it up this summer and for the project to be turned over, and it will become a state facility at the end of this summer. Weather complexity creates hurdles. Naturally, there have been delays in the 3-year project, one of New York's largest construction undertakings due to weather and other unforeseen incidents. There was planning on our team's part to take adversities and plan around them. The team's desire to play outside in the elements resulted in Gilbane Turner during much of the stadium work in the sometimes harsh weather of western New York. Gaining familiarity. Polka said the team had already had some staff in the building trying to familiarize themselves with the new surroundings. For example, the security team will move into the building and start using all cameras and access controls, and the guest experience team will get in there to train the staff and game day employers. Meanwhile, Gilbane Turner will continue knocking out minor construction items around the stadium. From the beginning, we had complete confidence we would deliver the vision for this building and deliver it on time. But it's surreal to be where we are right now, said Pete Gwelly, president of business operations for the Bills. What's happening inside the stadium? While it's easy to see that the outside of the stadium is nearing completion, it is harder to gauge what is going on inside. Gwelly said, "It looks amazing." However, some of the more premium spaces, such as suites and clubs, and the areas around them are not as far along. Technology inside the stadium, such as scoreboards, video boards, and sound and acoustic systems continue to be tested, and final signs are being installed. The 3 massive American Bison structures, the centerpiece to the Family Circle Plaza, will be delivered in June for installation. The Bills are also finding spaces inside and around the building that can be added and to become useful. Who gets in before the blue and red game? It is likely that only those who paid for suites and club seats around the new stadium will get to see the building before its official opening on August 8th. Gwilly said the team is looking at the possibility of holding a number of private, soft events leading up to the return of the blue and red. Those smaller events will help test the building for the dress rehearsal on August 8th, when all season ticket holders are expected to get into the new stadium for the first time. Gwilly said additional access to the building may be planned for fans between the blue and red practice and the team's final preseason home game on August 27th.
Thank you, Larry. You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. The time is 10:35. This is Asking Eric. Sister ghosts her brother, mother over politics. Dear Eric, I'm 70 and my 68-year-old sister has ghosted me over politics. After the 2024 election, she stopped responding to me. No birthday or Christmas cards, no phone calls, no emails. She also did this in 2016, ghosting my mother, 82 at the time, and me for more than 2 years. I finally wrote her a letter and told her I loved her the way she was, not the way I wanted her to be. Could she do the same? No response. I wrote to her about a major injury I had requiring surgery. No response. I have a very full life. My first wife died of leukemia after a 40-year marriage. I am 3 years into a relationship and marriage to a wonderful second wife. I have sons and grandkids and numerous friends. While I would love to have a relationship with my sister and feel melancholy about it, I am fed up and want to put my energy into my loving family and friends. Any suggestions on how to manage and or accept this? From severed sibling. Dear sibling, yours is unfortunately not an uncommon problem, as you'll see from the second letter today, which also touches on a political divide. On a human-to-human level, there must be space for empathy, for communication beyond headlines, for love in times of need that focuses on the places where you meet rather than on the places where you diverge. This is sometimes easier said than done. All politics is personal, and in a time when rhetoric more frequently stands in for political thought, it becomes harder to separate the human from what they espouse. It's not clear from your letter if the ghosting comes as a result of the specific series of disagreements, arguments, posts, or actions. And those tend to be important clues because a relationship never breaks where it breaks. It starts to fracture much earlier and in tinier ways. However, because it sounds like you've done work to try to reach beyond this fracture and even try to heal it, the work in front of you now is mourning the relationship that you had. Your sister has made her boundary clear, even though ghosting is rarely, if ever, the most effective form of communication. Acknowledge in thought or even in a journal that you're not getting what you want. You can even write down the things that you'll miss. If you process it like grief, the frustration and anger you feel will abate. Anger often tells us this is for you to fix. The hard lesson of grief is that there's nothing to fix. The task is to incorporate this new reality into the path going forward. Dear Eric, I have a friend of 50 years whom I love dearly. We have shared many of life's challenges and have been very supportive of each other. However, we couldn't be more different when it comes to our views on politics. We agreed about 30 years ago that we just wouldn't talk about politics because it is not what our friendship is based on. We have honored that agreement until recently. We met for lunch, and after the usual pleasantries, my friend began complaining about the current national/international politics. I made a comment that I didn't agree with her views, and I said we should change the subject. She kept talking about politics. The lunch ended on a somewhat unpleasant note. I don't want to end our long friendship, but I also don't want to argue politics with her when we see each other. I thought I had made it clear at our last lunch that I didn't want to talk politics, but she persisted. What else can I do? From Political Silence. Dear Silence, before the next lunch, ask your friend if you can talk about what happened previously. Go in with curiosity, with the goal being understanding the why behind her actions. It may be that she was too frustrated to focus on anything else on that particular day, and you were the person in front of her. Or it may be that something has changed in her thinking and your position is something she can't abide. What you're listening for is information about her thinking beyond the political issue. This isn't to say that the issue isn't important. Curiosity on both sides rests on the idea that you know it's important to her and she knows your political opinions are important to you. But the subject of the conversation is your friendship. And so the question underneath the question is, has our friendship changed? Your frustration about her not honoring the agreement you made 30 years ago is on the surface about political disagreement and respect, but underneath it's about a shared understanding of how your friendship works. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Following is analysis. Trump's age, threats to life are reminders of his own mortality. Washington. As President Trump departed the hospital Tuesday after his physical exam, he declared on his way back to the White House that everything had checked out, all caps, perfectly. But that is likely to do little to quiet questions about Trump's health, and even the president himself as he began making tacit acknowledgement of his own mortality, albeit often in the context of security, as he reflects periodically on his limited time left on earth and wonders aloud whether he would make it into heaven. I don't know how long I'll be around, he mused during an event on the East Room earlier this year. I have a lot of people gunning for me. Trump's visit to Walter Reed National Military Medical Center was the third time he's visited this facility for a medical exam since becoming the oldest president ever inaugurated last year. The White House said the checkup would include routine annual dental and medical assessments, despite him having already visited a dentist in Florida twice this year. Trump and his team eagerly describe him as a leader with boundless energy and unmatched acuity, shrugging off his visible signs of age in the moments when he appears to doze off during meetings. But even the rosy appraisals offered by his physician after frequent exams have done little to dampen questions about Trump's health. Presidents are not legally obligated to release anything about their health, so everything they do disclose is by choice. Several presidents before Trump were found afterward to have concealed medical issues in office. Trump, whose political brand is built on an image of strength and vigor, is famously loath to concede any physical fault. He makes near-daily comparisons to a predecessor he calls Sleepy Joe. His aides are quick to point out when he is working late, as they did this weekend when a communications aide announced the president was in the Oval Office at 9:30 p.m. I don't happen to be a senior. I'm much younger than you, Trump insisted at a retirement community in Florida this month. I'm a much younger man than you. Yet even though Trump is a louder and more visible president than former President Joe Biden was during his presidency, Trump still travels less often than he did during his first term and has on multiple occasions closed his eyes for long stretches during on-camera events. Repeated attempts on Trump's life by would-be assassins in his advanced age appear to be reminders that everything could change in an instant. Even as he and his aides downplay any physical deterioration, like bruising on his hands and swelling in his legs, the president has allowed brief glimpses into his thoughts on earthliness. A stray comment as he welcomed King Charles III to the White House last month offered a revealing window. Referencing his own parents' 63-year-long marriage, he turned to his own wife, who he wed 21 years ago. That's a record we won't be able to match, darling, said the 79-year-old president. Sorry, just not going to work out that way. In public, the president has maintained remarkable sang-froid around repeated threats on his life. When he emerged during a tuxedo in the White House briefing room last month after a panic-ridden press dinner, his demeanor was remarkably serene. It's a dangerous life, he shrugged, reflecting on whether he would change any of his habits an hour or so after the gunman tried to enter the ballroom where he was preparing to down on steak on lobster. Yet people who have spoken to Trump say his personal safety is never far from mind, even as he attempts to avoid it becoming a debilitating fixation. Iran, the country he is at war with, has previously plotted to assassinate him, and two people close to him, the Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe and the conservative activist Charlie Kirk, have been killed by lone gunmen during outdoor events in recent years. On Saturday, the Secret Service shot and killed a man who the agency said fired at officers at a checkpoint near the White House while Trump was inside, a reminder of the security danger the president faces. Questions about Trump's physical and mental fitness have existed since he entered office. A letter from his then personal physician in 2015 during the first run declared, if elected, Mr. Trump, I can state equivocally, will be the healthiest individual ever elected to the presidency. The doctor who wrote it, Harold Bornstein, later told CNN that Trump had dictated the statement himself. Medical episodes peppered Trump's first term, including a sudden and unexplained visit to Walter Reed that an aide later appeared to reveal was for a colonoscopy, and a bout of COVID-19 the White House officials said at the time failed to disclose the severity of. Since returning to the White House, visible ailments have prompted the White House into divulging new details of the president's physical condition. The White House said swelling in his ankles that was revealed last summer was a result of chronic venous insufficiency, a common issue related to age. Trump attempted wearing compression socks but found them uncomfortable. The bruises on Trump's hands, which he attempts to conceal with thick makeup, occur because he takes a large dose of aspirin, higher than his doctors recommend, and shakes many hands, the White House said. And officials insist the heavy eyelids during meetings are simply long blinks. After Trump visited Walter Reed in October, he revealed to reporters he'd undergone an MRI, but he refused to say why or even what part of his body was imaged. It wasn't until several months later that officials confirmed the procedure was actually a CT scan and was intended to definitively rule out any cardiovascular issues, according to White House physician Dr. Sean Barbabella. In his report on Trump's physical a year ago, Barbabella praised the president's active lifestyle and his frequent victories in golf events. Since then, however, Trump has concluded and conceded he rarely works out, quipping during an event on the new presidential fitness test he spends about 1 minute a day max on exercise. Even the most health-minded figures in his administration accept his diet is terrible. I don't know how he's alive, but he is, Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy, Jr., said on a podcast this year, citing Trump's intake of McDonald's candy and Diet Coke. Perhaps no health topic is more fraught than Trump's cognitive abilities. In his second term, his public events often veer wildly from topic to topic, none related to the stated reason for being there. He calls his winding way of speaking a weave, but his critics question whether he's mentally sound.
Thank you, Larry. President's $1.8 billion fund for victims of weaponization lacks precedent. This is an article from PolitiFact. The Trump administration says settling a presidential lawsuit over leaked tax data by establishing a $1.776 billion fund to pay people who say they were victims of judicial weaponization under President Joe Biden. Democratic critics reacted swiftly. Representative Seth Moulton, Democrat of Massachusetts, called the fund blatant corruption and a cash grab. Excuse me. Senator Elizabeth Warren, Democrat of Massachusetts, said it's an insane level of corruption, even for Trump. Senator Ron Wyden, Democrat of Oregon, posted on X, if Trump follows through, it will be one of the most brazen theft of taxpayer dollars by any president in history. Democrats said the money might be used to pay people who rioted at the U.S. Capitol on January 6, 2021, all of whom President Trump pardoned as one of the first acts of his second term. Trump administration officials did not rule that out. Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche told lawmakers May 19th he could not promise to bar compensation for January 6, 2021 rioters, Trump campaign donors, or Republican lawmakers whose phone records were seized by then Special Counsel Jack Smith, who investigated Trump between his two presidential terms. Trump weighed in on May 18th. This is reimbursing people that were horribly treated. It's anti-weaponization. They've been weaponized. They've been, in some cases, imprisoned wrongly. They paid legal fees they shouldn't have. They've gone bankrupt. Their lives have been destroyed. He continued, there's been numerous other occasions over the years where things like this have been done. The federal government often reaches settlements with plaintiffs and occasionally with large classes of people. Under law, an existing federal government judgment fund can be used to pay billions of dollars annually in settlements for actual or imminent litigation against the government, or settlements by agencies at the administrative level not involving a lawsuit. But the Justice Department, in announcing the new settlement fund, pointed to one particular case. In a May 18 press release, the Justice Department cited a 2011 settlement for the case Keeps Eagle versus Vilsack as legal precedent for the new fund. That case involved lawsuits by Native American farmers who alleged discrimination in federal assistance by government agencies. We found broad consensus among legal experts that the new fund differs from the Keeps Eagle Fund in 4 important ways. Never in the history of the Republic has an acting president leveraged his private litigation against his own administration, no less, to develop what, in effect, is a public benefit program tailor-made for his political supporters and allies, said Adam Zimmerman, a University of Southern California law professor who is an expert on presidential settlements. Police officers who served at the Capitol on January 6, 2021, filed suit May 20 to block the new settlement fund. When contacted for comment, the White House referred PolitiFact to the Justice Department, which did not respond to our inquiry. The Keeps Eagle settlement established specific requirements for people to receive payouts from the fund. Recipients had to be Native American and have farmed or ranched or attempted to farm or ranch from 1981 to 1999. They had to have sought a loan or loan servicing from the U.S. Agriculture Department during that period, and they had to have filed a complaint at the time they were denied a loan or otherwise treated unfavorably. By comparison, the standard for compensation from the new fund is vague. The document establishing the fund says potential recipients must assert at least one legal claim stating that the claimant was a victim of lawfare and or weaponization. It does not define the terms lawfare or weaponization. Gregory Sisk, a University of St. Thomas law professor, called these parameters an amorphous plan to pay unidentified people. A federal judge approved the Keeps Eagle settlement, and it had to meet ongoing judicial approval. An appeals court upheld the agreement, and the Supreme Court declined to hear an appeal. Experts said the Keeps Eagle settlement distribution of excess funds to nonprofit organizations serving Native American farmers and ranchers was unusual, but the 2011 settlement that received judicial approval included that possibility. In his May 19th congressional testimony, Blanche said 5 appointees who will oversee the new fund will act independently, but the fund description included no judicial role at any age. Once Trump's lawyers dropped their IRS leak lawsuit, any possibility for judicial oversight vanished. The five-member panel appointed by the Attorney General will decide on payouts, with one of the members chosen in consultation with congressional leadership. The President can remove any member without cause, the fund outline says, and the President can also fire the Attorney General at will, as Trump has already done in his second term. Such a structure, Sisk said, creates a high risk that will be paid to allies of the Trump administration as an ongoing political fund. The Keeps Eagle settlement had a $750 million value. Of that, $380 million was left undispersed to individuals and went to nonprofits. In today's dollars, the $760 million would be $1.15 billion. The settlement considered 4,300 claims, of which more than 3,600 were accepted. The new $1.776 billion fund is larger, and the group of potential recipients might be smaller. The new fund is more than twice as large as Keeps Eagle Fund in nominal dollars and 50% larger in inflation-adjusted dollars. The number of pardoned January 6, 2021 rioters is around 1,600. Even if they're all included, plus additional claimants in unrelated cases, the total would still likely be smaller than the number of Keeps Eagle beneficiaries. This is a huge payout for a claim by a small number of individuals. Sisk said the Keeps Eagle Settlement Fund and the lawsuit that prompted it addressed the same issue. The people who could claim compensation from the Keeps Eagle Fund were plaintiffs in the original lawsuit, which is standard by how much settlements are created, said Tax Law Center Policy Director Brandon DeFott. The new settlement fund, however, did not involve a class of plaintiffs, and the suit that led to the new settlement involved leaks of Trump family tax documents. The fund and the issues it purports to redress have nothing to do with the originating lawsuit and leaked information at the IRS, said Cheryl Bader, a Fordham University law professor. The plaintiffs in the IRS leak were the president, his family, and one of their business, DeVos said, and they are specifically barred from receiving monetary payment or damages from the fund. Our ruling. Trump said there's been numerous other occasions over the years when the federal government created a reserve similar to the new $1.776 billion anti-weaponization settlement fund. The Justice Department cited a single settlement in a lawsuit filed by Native American farmers as legal precedent for the new fund, but the two differ in at least 4 fundamental ways. The earlier case had more specific compensation standards, significant judicial oversight, a smaller dollar amount for a potentially larger group of beneficiaries, and a more standard process for creating it. We rate the statement false. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Just briefly, NATO. The U.S. intends to significantly reduce military contributions available to assist European allies in a crisis, including fighter jets, warships, and mid-air refueling aircraft, German news outlet Spiegel reported Tuesday. You've been listening to a reading of the Buffalo News for Wednesday, May 27, 2026. We read the Buffalo News live on weekday and Sunday mornings at 9 a.m. and rebroadcast at 4 p.m. For more information, call 716-821-5555. Your readers today have been
Linda Ranella
and Larry Beenan. Thank you for listening, and please continue to stay safe.
Welcome summer with your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. We're planning a summer bash bigger and better than ever before. It's Friday, June 26th at Creekside Banquet Facility in Grove, located at the corner of Union Road and William Street in Cheektowaga. You're invited to enjoy a buffet chicken and pasta dinner, your first drink on us, a basket raffle, and Buffalo Music Hall of Fame party band The Boys of Summer from 6 to 9 p.m. Tickets are $50 and support the 160 volunteers who read all the programming offered by Radio Reading. That's Friday, June 26th from 6 to 9 p.m. at Creekside Banquet Facility in Grove in Cheektowaga. Get your tickets now by calling 716-821-5555 extension 3 or online at nfradioreading.org. Thank you to New Era Kep Foundation, Tyvarian Law, and Perry's Ice Cream for sponsoring this largest event of the year.
Coming up next in the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, we have the New York Times Style section. Following that at noon is the USA Today. Stay with us for these readings and more. following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or have another print disability.